I think I've built my career on failing, cold emails, and asking for things that are way out of my depth.
Welcome to Let's Talk, ladies, conversations across generations. I'm MB Roberts, an author and journalist, and this is a podcast where we talk to women from their 20s to their 90s about a bunch of hot topics. We ask questions, share experiences, and learn from each other. And it's not just about older women giving advice. We want to know what younger women are thinking too. Today, I'm joined by co-host Katie Neal. So let's get talking. Did your mom start her own business, or how about your grandmother? And I'm not talking about a family business with your dad, your grandfather, your cousins, just the women. You know anybody like that?
Well, I'll say I don't think my mom would think about it as that she was a business owner, but she was a freelancer for many years. And as you know, who's someone who's been a freelancer, that really is a business owner.
It really
in
is.
a way.
I know, but I forgot to say hi. Hi, Katie.
Oh, hello.
We just got to talking, didn't we?
That's how we do.
Yeah, your mom worked and you ended up doing similar work. That was a great role model.
I mean, all when we were young, you know, she was freelancing. She'd get up at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning and be copy editing manuscripts. And like I said, I don't think, you know, she didn't have business cards. She probably wouldn't have called herself a small business owner, but she absolutely was. And she was, you know, managing all of that and marketing herself and making those connections.
Oh my, I'm so impressed. Well, there was a recent Women in the Workplace report from McKinsey & Company. And it was in partnership with leanin.org, so they do some great research. But their conclusion in 2024 was there's been notable gains with women at work, but in many ways, things are the same or worse than 10 years ago. What are we going to do? How does that make you feel to hear that, my young friend?
I mean, I think it's validating in a way because I think we feel that, right? So it's validating to have some research that actually backs it up, that we haven't made as much progress maybe as we should have.
Or maybe things are a little stagnant and you know, the wage gap exists, you know, the stat where women make a percentage less of men for the same work. Now it's a little better certainly than it's been. The latest stats say that women earn 84 cents to every dollar a man earns. But that's almost the same as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're feeling, I think.
Yeah. It hasn't nudged. But there's some good news, especially, you know, we talk a lot about women of different ages, our young women friends. There's good news that women from 25 to 34 make an average 95 cents to every dollar earned by a man in the same age group, in their same.
That's great, though.
Yeah,
that makes a difference.
I'm happy to hear that.
Can I share something funny that I saw? So, you know, it was International Women's Day. We have that day recently, and it happened to fall on the same day as Spring Forward with our clocks. You know, so someone said, you know, it's kind of appropriate that International Women's Day was 1 hour shorter than every other day.
Yeah, we're a little short.
We all kind of feel that, don't we?
We're a little short.
Always get a little shortchanged.
I like it. That is a great comparison. Well, for today's chat, we're honing in on women entrepreneurs specifically. How are things different for a female business owner today as compared to, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 2000s? And Katie, you know I was going to bring this up.
Your favorite fun fact.
One of my bugaboos.
Not so fun fact.
Right. But I'm so all about the credit card. Women were able to get credit cards in their own names in 1974. Prior to that, a man had to co-sign, be that your estranged brother, your dad, your ex-husband, whatever. And that just kills me. And now, neither you or I have been the exemplary owners of credit cards. So it's for
right,
good and bad. That's another discussion.
True.
But that the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was passed in 1974. And before that, women needed a man's signature. And I bring that up because that's a way to get credit,
right.
If you're trying to start a business.
Yeah.
And now this is what blew me away when we were doing our research. The Women's Business Ownership Act of 1988 That's when it was legal for a woman to get a business loan without requiring a man's
That's shocking.
signature as co-signer. 88. That's all those years after 1974.
Yeah.
And the law was signed by none other than President Reagan, who we don't think of as
Our hero.
completely progressive, but way to go, President Reagan. And it was that made a big difference. If you can get credit or a loan,
Yeah.
it really impacts
How do you
your
do it
business.
without that, really?
Exactly. And the thing is that as of a year ago, Wells Fargo stats that women own almost 40% of all U.S. businesses. So
That's awesome.
that is pretty great.
Yeah.
But really, you have to have the working capital. You have to have the credit.
That does feel like progress, though. I mean, we're more than 40% of the population, but that feels significant.
It does. And then the growth rate for women-owned businesses has outpaced the rate of men's by a large degree, by over 80%. In the last couple of years, so that is encouraging. So go back to your idols. Your mom, certainly. I definitely have some idols. Katharine Graham, the Washington
yes.
Post. Now I know, back in the day, she inherited the paper. It was the family business. Her husband had tragically committed suicide, and it landed in her lap. But man, did she navigate and just break down walls and courage. The whole Watergate episode happened on her watch. There was
Absolutely.
a huge strike. Just really put up with just the doubters and the haters for sure. And another person I really admire is Sarah Blakely of Spanx. I just love the story that she started her business with $5,000, and there was another oft told story that at dinner at night her dad would ask her and the family, okay, so what did you fail at today?
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's like that you tried something and she saw a need and solved a huge problem, and billions later. But that's it. There's some other famous women own businesses around.
I think of like Estee Lauder, pioneering the cosmetics, and there was Elizabeth Arden, some of those women who, and there's a great book, and then there was a subsequent Broadway play about kind of their rivalry and some of the rivalries of those women in that industry, but they were truly pioneers.
Or what about Mary Kay and the pink Cadillac?
Oh my gosh, Mary Kay. Well, yeah.
Or Avon. We shouldn't chuckle. We shouldn't chuckle.
Well,
I don't mean to chuckle.
Because I think those are really interesting because those were those home-based businesses. So I think you could there's probably did a lot of good in terms of giving, stay-at-home moms and things an opportunity. But that has kind of morphed into the multi-level marketing thing, which is not so good. As many podcasts have kind of done deep dives on that, but it is interesting. I mean, Avon and Mary Kay were really the pioneers in those like home-based businesses and targeting women and saying, here you can make your own money,
right, which open the door. Totally open the door. And then obviously so many cool women entrepreneurs followed.
The story about failure is interesting because I read a great book a couple years ago called The Confidence Code. And they talked about how, and it was specifically for women, and they said really the key is failing. Like that's how you build confidence, is by failing and bouncing back. But one of the reasons that women kind of fall behind is it's not made as easy for us to fail. It's not made as comfortable.
Sure,
as,
you think
for men, think about all the, men we idolize now, how many failed businesses they have. Women, you fail once and they're like, well, told
that's
you
it.
so.
You feel like that's the end. See, I can't do it.
So I love that Sarah Blakely, I think there's something to that she kind of, because of her dad, probably learned early on that it was okay.
Yeah, I love that. It
makes a big difference. And Spanx has expanded so far beyond there. Everybody's wearing the like Spanx sweatsuits now, the Spanx jeans, like. Oh yeah! So far beyond the original, it's a great success story.
It's a huge success story.
I love their clothes. If they want to sponsor us,
we do. We are Spanxers for sure, for sure. So I am really excited to talk more about women entrepreneurs, and we've tapped a really knowledgeable guest to tell us about it. Haley Zapolski is the Nashville and Entrepreneur Center's Capital Connector. How about that for a title?
Love it.
It's her job is to advise startups and help them secure funding, and she's only 28 years old.
Oh my God.
Let's talk to Haley. Haley Zapolski, also known as Zap, mostly known as Zap, right? Is from Iowa, went to college at University of Michigan and majored in economics and moved to Nashville where we are about 5 years ago. Is that right?
That's right.
Well, hey, Haley.
Thanks so
Zap.
much for having me.
Call her Zap.
Yes.
That's right. And she's got a really cool newsletter, Zap's Wrap, on LinkedIn that you can check out. We all look at that all the time. And wow, you have the coolest job description at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, Capital Connector. Could you tell us about this? Like that job, that sounds pretty aspirational.
Sure. So my role at the National Entrepreneur Center, I've worked there in some shape or form for many, many years now. Nowadays, I work in a fractional capacity, working with the early stage founders, specifically advising them on accessing capital. So I almost feel like the better title would be maybe capital coach, because I think that's the way bigger part is all the coaching before any connecting happens, which means really explaining to folks like what your deck should look like, what investors are interested in investing in, how to frame your pitch, your story. And then when folks are ready, capital ready, I try to make introductions to them to relevant investors that I think are likely to invest. But
there's the connecting.
90% of the work is the coaching, really. Yeah.
Do you feel a lot like right then when you were describing that, if that were me, I would feel just a lot of responsibility. Like part of the reason, besides that I can't do math, that I would never have been a financial advisor, I would have felt responsible if something didn't work, or I don't mean to go to the negative, but that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I would say that's why the coaching is the biggest part. And a lot of my role, which is not necessarily fun, is telling people why they're not ready and what they need to do to be ready. And ultimately I'm only making introductions when I think, hey, if I'm going to put you up at bat, like I want you to be able to swing and hit the ball.
Right.
And so until folks are ready to do that, it's hard. And then in terms of the capital connecting, it is kind of funny because I feel constantly like woefully underqualified, but like the reality is that anyone who is more qualified than me is like way too wealthy to care to even help
to want to help people.
Yeah, so it is like I know more than anyone else that's willing to do the job, but I know less than all the people that are not willing to do the job.
You're in a sweet spot.
Who knows?
Yes, well, and lucky for us in Nashville that there is someone who's willing to help, because I think you're right. A lot of people aren't.
What are some of the things you find? I'm sure some of the people who come in are really smart and they really know their own product or their own business. And what do you see? Guys, you're missing this. You're missing. You need this. To tell your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like it's a complete misconception that investors invest in grand ideas. It's just not the reality whatsoever.
Like it's kind of boring sometimes. It's like not this glamorous.
More like people think they have like a pitch deck and that they're going to get funded from that, and that's just completely false. Ultimately, what investors are looking for is demand from the market.
Yeah.
There's so much demand that the company needs more capital to go fulfill on that demand.
Yeah.
And so people come in being like, I have an idea, give me $1 million and I'll go do this, that, and the other. And it's like, oof, this is actually backwards.
Yeah.
The truth is that you need to already have proved out typically, wow, look how much demand there is for this product I've created for the market.
And I need money to grow, basically.
Yeah, customers are lining up that we can't even serve them fast enough. I need to and we need to build more features. We need to hire more salespeople. We need to hire more people to handle our customers. That's really what investors are looking at backing. And a lot of people, they don't understand that completely. And so that's what a lot of the coaching is about, is like, hey, here's the traction that you need to go achieve to kind of attract institutional capital.
Right, because it sounds almost backward. I'm like, you can laugh at me if you want to, but like it reminds me of Shark Tank. When I first started watching Shark Tank, I was like, but they're already selling stuff. But then it was like, oh, they are already selling stuff, and they need money to sell more. And so it's sometimes
investors love to invest when you don't need money. So like the best thing you can do, which sounds so silly, is like when you don't need money, that's when they're like dying to give you money. And when you need the money, they're probably not going to give you the money, but there is a huge spectrum in between.
Oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. Well, as far as women starting their own businesses, do you have any role models in that, like women entrepreneurs?
Well, my easy one is our good friend Grace Hansen.
She's been on the podcast, and she's very successful.
Building Elysian. I've been able to invest. I have 15 portfolio companies, and only 2 are women. But I would say that those are the folks that I just admire them both tremendously. It is very few women that start tech startups, which is what I work with and invest into. And Grace is like a superhero in terms of, I've just never met someone probably more bullish and confident about building a $1 billion business. So I think that's the challenge in the world that I live in terms of early stage startups and venture capital, is that you have to believe you're building a $1 billion business. And I think a lot of women, for better or worse, are very like practical and realistic and don't like to make promises they can't keep. And so when they do tell you that, you really believe it.
Right.
And Grace is definitely one of them.
I was reading an interview that you did when you said you failed a lot personally, like fired from your first job in New York. I hope I'm not embarrassing you by asking that.
I don't even know how you found that, but I like that story.
She's an investigative journalist.
I certainly have been fired from like my first waitress job in New York. I was like, wow. But I went to the next one, the next restaurant 2 doors down, and got a job there. It's, that's what you do.
Yeah, I think you can always fail up. Like, I work with so many founders who fail,
yes, they do,
and they fail up constantly. And I'm like, it's just it's a mindset.
Yes.
And so, I have plenty of failures. I think I've built my career on failing, cold emails, and asking for things that are way above. Way out of my depth.
Have you always been comfortable with that, or is that something you really had to learn? Like being scared of like asking for things? Because I definitely think that's something women are afraid of sometimes.
Truthfully, I suck at asking for things, but what I am good at is figuring out how to provide someone with value and kind of reaching out to them cold and being like, hey, I know I can help you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And doing that in like a very bold, confident way, to the point they're like, okay, well, this lady thinks that she can do something. And
do you get resistance? I mean, sometimes. Or does the confidence?
Yeah,
win
totally.
them over?
So, I mean, to be more literal about it, like I spend a lot of my time talking to investors from outside of Nashville, trying to get them to look at companies inside of Nashville.
Yeah.
And so I'm reaching out to people who have, $100 million in assets under management that they're choosing what to invest in. And I am someone who has absolutely no right to be reaching out to them to do what I do. I don't work in venture. I don't have my own fund. I've made my track record on my own, kind of brick by brick, and doing it. And so sometimes when I reach out, I think people think that I don't have the right pedigree.
Yeah.
If that's something they value, they're going to immediately like toss me out the door,
Do they hold your age against you, Zap? Because you're only 28. Does that work against you sometimes, or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way. Like, there's been a lot of instances in my career where my first gut reaction is, it's because I'm a young woman. Mm-hmm. But I've really learned that that's not helpful at all. Like, I can't change that, and like blaming anything on that. And I've sort of decided, like, a shark is a shark.
Yeah.
And a shark is going to be a shark to anyone they can be a shark to. And so I personally don't spend a ton of time ever thinking about it's because of my age or gender, even though my age and gender is pretty unique. And I think that because I don't, like, I just can't let myself think about it because then it'll get to you.
It's true.
And I think it did get to me early on. And nowadays, sometimes I'll feel it, like, in my gut. And it'll be, like, my mentors around me being like, Zap, it's not because you're a young woman. It's because they're a shark. And, like, sharks, and I'm like, that's real. And so I think that I try not to think about my identity as much as opposed to, like, the work I do and the value I can provide more.
That's fantastic. And that's the way it should be. And I was just thinking conversely, now we've talked about our friend Grace, who an insurance executive, is in her early 60s. I think she's just got it all going on. But I have, as a 60-year-old person, I'm told not to put my age on my resume, which I don't. And sometimes I think it works against you to be a little bit older.
I think that's true, especially in my industry of tech startups.
Yeah.
Like, so many investors want to invest in literally like a 21-year-old.
They want this hot, like smart person, and how could a 60-year-old know about AI? I mean, I feel like that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Not that I'm selling AI.
Yeah, no, you're on the money. I think it's the same thing. I think that ultimately, when you're raising from investors are pattern matchers, and so that's their job. They see 1,000 companies and they decide to invest in a handful, and so they're constantly putting people in boxes because that's their fastest way they can assess 1,000.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they definitely put people in boxes based upon gender and age, whether it is older or younger. They're looking for, like, that crazy sweet spot. But ultimately, a lot of the outliers, to create something different from everything else, there's probably something about you that is different from everybody else. That's not necessarily age or gender. That might be something in your background or what you're building or your belief system or whatever. But, when some folks zig, I'm kind of like, let's zag. And that's where the opportunity is and the alpha is in investing, is my personal belief.
Yeah.
All right, now I got to call you out, Zap, because you've got a Mary Kay lip balm with you. And
this is so awesome.
I clocked it right away because we were talking about Mary Kay, and the intro is like, for a lot of women, they're, or the sort of an opportunity for women to be business women, in a certain generation. And of course, now we kind of look back and now we know a lot more about MLMs, like you mentioned. So do you have some connection to Mary Kay, or do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. My mom has sold Mary Kay for like decades.
Technically, does she have
I
the
think
pink catalog?
Still,
does she have the
No, she was not that good at it. But she did host. I do think having a Mary Kay mom made me who I am today in some ways.
Yeah.
My mom hosted a ton of, they were called Margaritas and Mary Kay parties at our house. And so that made me love bringing people together, loved hosting parties. Yeah. I still host events weekly, literally. And I think it's really because my mom would host all these Mary Kay parties, always. And then I think it kind of cites, like, I grew up in a pretty middle-class, Midwestern background, and I suppose I always had a desire to do something bigger in life. Not necessarily make more money, but I wanted to make a bigger impact than perhaps, like, the small town I grew up in.
Yeah.
And so I think that always kind of, like, motivated me of, like, my mom never had the pink Cadillac, but, like, I wanted the pink Cadillac.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I want to buy it yourself.
Well, and I really do have mixed feelings about those, because it really was something, an opportunity for women that they didn't have, maybe not your mom's age, but before that. And then, now I think we just mainly think about the downsides, and a lot of the new MLMs are especially bad. But
I mean, the pitch is great. It's like you can still be the stay-at-home mom with your raising your kids, but
you make your own schedule.
You can run a business and be your own entrepreneur, and there's a product to sell. And so I love the concept. I think my mom was great at selling the makeup, she was bad at recruiting other people to sell the makeup, which is how you make the money.
Which is how you do it. Yeah.
Right on.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so she was great at selling makeup. Are you kidding me? We had all these parties. She was wheeling and dealing, Mary Kay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was like, I don't want to convince other people to sell it. Like, that feels weird. Like, they're my friends. Like, they should decide if they want it.
Yep.
Didn't want to put pressure or have that responsibility, like take advantage.
Yeah.
You know, my mom was such not a saleswoman. I did a little bit of sales just for a minute, and she's like, "You call people up and ask them for money?" You know, and I'm like, I was selling sponsorships, and so, well, not exactly. You know, it wasn't shady, but she just thought that was yucky.
Yeah.
That you didn't do, and that's like, well, how do you think you get your product out there? It's like I didn't see it as yucky at all. But what are the trends? Do you think entrepreneurs are getting younger? I mean, or just that it's organically happening that, you know, folks in their 20s and 30s it's their time. I mean, do you think they're getting younger?
I don't know if entrepreneurship really has an age, but I do think more young people are seeing all the tools you can see online to build your own business.
Yeah.
And there's no question that it's easier than ever to start a business yourself because all the tools, all the resources are out there. You can reach your customers all online. And so I think anyone can do it, but I do think people who who grew up digitally native, it's easier to see the opportunity of, oh, I can make a TikTok video and sell my course or this product, or
without having to spend all this money in advertising or you know,
and they
mass
can learn
production.
about it as well. All the information is there, and so I still think kind of lived experience and having a unique perspective on a problem you want to solve in the world is what creates the biggest successes, but having an understanding of kind of where technology is going, the writing is on the wall that like anyone
helpful.
can work for themselves.
Yeah.
What are some of the cool business ideas you've seen? Like, was there something surprising that kind of came across your desk, you know, the last year or so that you're like, wow, I did not think of that. That is so unusual.
Good question. Truthfully, I tend to invest in a lot of, I would call unsexy businesses. So I don't know, you know.
It's not Spanx or.
Grace Hansen is building, you know, AI for insurance claims. I've got another insurance deal too, and surety bonds. So my personal portfolio, I don't know, is going to like blow you away. But I'll give something that maybe like any listener can tap into, which is a company I really like in Nashville called Folks Table, that was really looking at, they're called the sit-down social network. And so the idea is that most of these social network platforms, they're not designed to meet people or get out of the house at all. They're just designed to show you people you already know or people you don't know but are not interested in getting to know you because they're influencers. And it's just broken. And so Folks is building a platform where folks can sign up and essentially go to events and meet strangers and have intimate, curated conversations and activities. And I really like their branding, and their tech is pretty sleek for how early they are. And yeah, I just, that's one I really like, and I like how they're going after to solve the problem and what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the ones I've looked at that anyone can join. And AI for claims, maybe.
Well, you kind of hit on this, Zap, but so when somebody that you think is going in the right direction, got a good idea, they got all the data and everything ready, but they kind of hit a roadblock. As a coach, what do you tell them? Like what is, you just kind of look and give them a logical next step, or like what do you do when someone doesn't give up?
Yeah. So in being an entrepreneur, you're definitely going to hit roadblocks. I think a lot of the job of the entrepreneur is to choose between all bad decisions, which decision to make. And they're all bad. And so I think when folks hit one of those challenges, the role that I try to play with like the founders I've invested in is kind of figure out like, what do they want? Like, do they just want to complain and like be sad right now? Okay, great. Do they want to kind of look at all these bad options and decide which one they want to pick?
Which is the least bad? Yeah.
Yeah, and like really think about it, because I usually find like at the first hit, they just want to like be a little defeated for like 24 hours. Okay, cool. Let's like regather ourselves, and as long as they want to keep moving forward, let's talk about it the next day and sit down and be like, all right, it sucks, but we could either do A, B, or C. Let's lay it all out and kind of decide how to push forward. So that, you know, those instances are like having a co-founder quit, getting sued, running out of money. You can always stay alive. Like, there's always a way to keep going, is my true belief. It's just, do you want to do what it takes to keep going? Because it might suck.
There you go. That's real honest.
I love that.
Yeah. That's a really good thing to know and to remember. So, yeah, you do have the option to stop or keep going. You know, it's going to happen if you keep going.
Yeah, and most companies, they don't really, you know, we see more in the media like they die in like a burst of flames.
Yeah.
That's not actually very common. Most of them, in my industry, we talk about they kind of like silently like go into the woods and die.
Well,
and so they don't always, that's when they stop reaching out for that help. That's when they stop engaging. They stop telling people what's going on. They kind of go silent. They stop posting online. They stop sharing updates. And then they just kind of quietly shut things down.
Right.
Well, my friend just interviewed for a job, and I said, oh, you know, where's the office? And she said, oh, well, they work in the WeWork in Nashville. And of course, I was obsessed with the WeWork saga.
Oh, yeah.
The TV show, the book. And I'm like, WeWork's still around. You know, I mean, that was like an epic fail, but they still exist.
It's a big old building staring at us, right?
Yeah. I don't even know who runs it anymore.
I
the
know.
CEO, but
Yeah.
what's his name? Adam is he raised more money, you know? So
That was so fascinating. That was
Ooh, that's a whole other chat.
but that's an example of something that bursts into flames.
Right.
So we see the media of the burst into flame stories because that's good television, but the majority are kind of boring and quiet.
Yeah, there's no show called the fizzle or the you know, like well, you've inspired us today.
I think so, for sure.
We've learned some things.
You guys are so sweet. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for teaching us things that we don't know. It was great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Let's Talk, Ladies, Conversations Across Generations. We'd love to hear from you. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also send us an email at comments@lets-talkladies.org or leave us a message at 629-888-3542. We'll talk again soon on LTL.